Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Well, today we're going to go back and take another look at the ESU CabControl system, as I promised, and I'll update you on some of the advanced features, some of the basic features that I've discovered and worked with in the interim, and also I want to let you know about a couple of features that you need to be aware of. So stick around for the video and we'll get started. Hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Well, before we get started with our look back at the ESU CabControl system, there are a couple of things that I want to update you on. First of all, the Hyperfokus block detector and signal logic boards that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago are back in stock. He has received a shipment of these from China, and he should have them up and available, if not by the time you watch this video, easily by the weekend. So do a search on eBay for Hyperfokus, and that's Hyperfokus with a K, not a C, and look for the signal boards. He told me that due to the tariffs, he had to increase the price a little bit. I think he was saying he thought he would have to bump them up about $1. Okay, so that's enough for that one. Another thing that I wanted to update you on, and that is WWScenics, the maker of static grass and a lot of other products that I have reviewed and showed you how to use here in the last few months. And one thing I wanted to let you know is that they are now available from Iron Planet Hobbies in Missouri. So you can go online to the ironplanethobbies.com website and you can look up and order WWScenics from them. You no longer have to order them through Etsy or directly from the WWScenics website in the UK. Let's go ahead and take a look at what I have to show you about the CabControl unit. Now, one thing before we get started with our look at the ESU system here, I want to give you my recommendations for what you do when you get a new DCC system like this or any other, because it takes a while to familiarize yourself with the operations of a new system, a new throttle, and the like. So what I recommend you do is don't go rushing down, hook it up to your layout, and start trying to push buttons and make things work, because that can just make things worse. What I suggest you do is get yourself a tabletop workbench or something, set up your DCC system on top of that, and just put down a piece of flex track, 3 feet long, and get yourself a locomotive with a decoder in it, put it on that track. And then go through the manual, checking out the various features that they show you how to use in that manual, and become familiar with all of those steps that are required to turn power on, to turn the functions on, to enter a locomotive, all of these various features that are required when you get a new DCC system. The worst thing you can probably do is to rush downstairs, plug it into your layout, and try to make it work the way that you think it should work. Because the way you think it might work probably is going to be very different from the technician or from the designer in Germany or in Florida or wherever who designed the operations of that particular throttle and DCC system. Because these technical guys, they have a very different way of thinking than normal human beings. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the features of the CabControl system, and I'll bring you up to date on what I have discovered on that. And there are a number of things. Now, first off, one thing that's very important that I have run into and that you have to be careful about, and that is powering the throttle itself. Okay, I think you can see, I think that's come in focus now, and you can see right here it says 90%. So it's telling you that the battery is about 90% of charge, and that's pretty darn good. In order to keep this from discharging while you're not using it, if you're going to leave it sitting for a long time or overnight, anything like that, you need to turn it off, because it will go all the way down to 0 overnight if you're not careful, as I have found. Now what you need to do here is, this is the on-off button here on the top, and you push that, and you'll see you get a little menu pop up here. Hopefully that's going to focus. Yeah, there we go. And you hit power off. And it comes up and it says OK. Now make sure that you do that and that it says shutting down. Because if you just set that sucker down, it will discharge in overnight, let me tell you. And it does take a little while to recharge. Another thing that I wanted to go over is a couple of issues related to operation of the ESU CabControl system. And the first thing is Railcom. Now, Railcom is a neat feature. It was originally developed by Burn Lens in the Lens company in Europe, and other companies over there have jumped on board with using it. ESU uses it. Zemo used it for a while. Apparently they no longer do. And there are other companies in Europe that have adopted Railcom. Now, in the US, Lens offered it to the NMRA to incorporate it as part of the NMRA DCC standards and recommended practices, and they subsequently have done that. But I will tell you that it has not been widely adopted here in the US by US manufacturers. The only one that I know that has incorporated Railcom into their decoders, and I believe their DCC systems, are TCS. And so, depending on the age of your decoder and the version, you may or may not have Railcom compatible decoders if they're TCS. There are other issues though, because a lot of the US products were not made to operate with Railcom, and therefore they might not work. Some of the NCE decoders do not work with Railcom. One of the viewers here commented that in order to get his Switch 8 accessory decoders from NCE to work, he had to turn Railcom off. Okay, so in order to turn Railcom off, all you have to do is hit the menu button, go down here to CabControl settings, hit that, and you can see Railcom right here. Hit the little check mark and it goes off. It's that simple. Same thing, turn it back on, just hit the button again. Railcom and Railcom Plus. And we'll talk about those in a second. Okay, now what's the difference between Railcom and Railcom Plus? Well, Railcom is a feature that allows bidirectional communication between the decoders in your locomotives that have Railcom compatible functions and the command station itself. So it can do things like it allows you to read back CV settings when you have programmed a locomotive on the main. It allows various other features of bidirectional communication. Railcom Plus is an added functionality. It's available, for example, on Loco 5 decoders and decoders that are compatible with that capability. And it allows you to literally place that locomotive on your layout, and it will talk to your CabControl system or your main DCC system and tell it what it is, what decoder it is, what locomotive it is, the number, all of those kind of features. And if you've got the capabilities and the software to do it, you can hook it up to your computer, and if you've got blocks separated all over your layout, you can literally follow an individual locomotive everywhere on your layout, and therefore be able to keep track of all your trains. So it has a lot of capabilities. Whether or not all of that's available at this time, I don't know. And also, you have to have Railcom and Railcom Plus decoders or capable decoders in your locomotives. Now, in the US, that's not a lot, because the only ones I know of that are readily available here would be Loco 5 decoders and TCS decoders. Okay, we've got power. Let me turn power onto the truck. Okay, you can see I've got track power turned on. Now, watch the readout here. You can see it's bouncing all over the place. We're going from a low down somewhere around 13.75 there, and it's bouncing up, 14.64 a minute ago, 14.83. So it's all over the place. This is not a usable reading. So this was an early version of the alpha meter. And let me show you what happens when I turn Railcom off. So I can go in, whoops, go in here and turn Railcom off and watch what happens. As soon as I turn Railcom off, we get a stable voltage readout. So somewhere around 14.88, 14.9 volts. And that's what happens. And I'll tell you why in a second. Now I have another one here. I won't bother showing you this, but this is a newer version of the alpha meter. And what they had to do is they rewrote the firmware, the software that is built in to these devices so that it could deal with Railcom Plus. So this one here does not. You can tell the difference because it's got the lettering is actually printed on, whereas on this one you can barely read it because it's etched into the surface. It does say DCC Concepts Alpha Meter, but again, that's simply because of the way it was manufactured. So this one here has the updated version of the firmware. This one has the old version of the firmware. By turning Railcom off, you get compatibility. Now another problem that I talked about several years ago was with the PSXX power management circuit breaker boards. When they first came out, they did not work with ESU systems. It would not intercept a short circuit, so the command stations were shutting down. And after a lot of research, they found out that it was simply the way that Railcom functions. And what Railcom does is, in order to get feedback from your decoder, it has to turn track power off. So it's constantly turning track power off and back on again, off and on, off again, on again, that routine. And it stays off for about 400 microseconds, a very short time, right? But it can affect DCC accessories and how they work. Now, fortunately, the folks at DCC Specialties, Larry Meyer there, was able to rewrite the firmware so that he was able to get around the problems that his PSXX boards were having with Railcom. So those work fine now, and there's lots of information on how you can work around that. And there's also information out there on other features. So that's the story on Railcom and what you have to look out for and be aware of. If you've got something that you've got installed on your layout and it's an important part of your layout operations and you don't have more than a couple of low sound decoders, then you can just turn Railcom off and not use it. That's very simple, quick fix for it. Otherwise, you might have to look into whether or not the manufacturer has come out with an updated version of the firmware. So right now, I'm about ready to send my PSXX circuit boards back to Tony's Train Exchange to have the firmware updated in them to that new version. Now, for those of you who are interested in some more information about Railcom and what is compatible, what systems have it, what systems don't, that kind of information, you can go to the DCC Wiki, and that literally is dcc.wiki.com/Railcom. And I'll put that link in the description for those of you who want to look for that. And it has a lot of information about the history of Railcom, what it does, how it works, and which manufacturers have bought into it. So take a look at that. Okay, now another feature of the CabControl system is it has a circuit breaker built into it, like most command stations do. However, one of the things you have to be aware of with the ESU version is we do not know the trip speed of that circuit breaker. And that's of importance to you because if you want to break your layout up into various blocks to control shorts in various areas, then you might want to use a PSX or some other circuit breaker. And that circuit breaker has to be faster than the one in the ESU CabControl system. But we don't know how fast this one is. And I haven't been able to get that information from the folks at ESU. So you have to be very careful. As I said earlier, the PSXX system now is compatible with the ESU circuit breaker and with Railcom. So those would work. You can, of course, play around with the settings on your PSX circuit boards, change those trip speeds. But remember that in all cases, if you're using, say, frog juicers on your layout, then they have to trip faster than the circuit breakers that you're using on your layout, which have to trip faster than the one in the cab control or your DCC system, or the faster one will trip first. So be aware of that when you're working with your systems. If you have a layout with a bunch of circuit breakers on your layout, then they might not trip faster than the one in the cab control unit. And that's particularly true for those of you who might be using light bulbs, ballast lamps, as circuit breakers, because those are notoriously very slow. Okay, let's look at a couple of features here on the throttle that you might want to adjust. Now you'll note right here next to this big knob is a button that says stop. I hope you can read that. And it allows you to turn track power off. Okay, so if I press the stop button with my thumb, you'll see the little red light here that indicates power has been terminated to the track. Now one of the problems is that when you're moving this throttle, particularly if you're holding it with your right hand, you can very easily swipe across this stop button. And unfortunately, it is very, very sensitive. And I found out right off that I was constantly turning power off for some reason. I thought it was something wrong with the unit when I first got it. So, but after looking through the manual a bit, I found this feature here. You go into your menu, go down to App Settings, and there's a little area here called Stop Button Delay. Press on that, and you can change the timing for that stop button. So you can make it super fast with 0 milliseconds, or you can take it out to 1000 milliseconds. And that's what I did, because I don't want to be turning that thing off while I'm in the middle of running a train. So you can do that. All you have to do is tap it, and you can see it's now at 750. So that changed it right away. So I think that's an important thing to be aware of. Also, another thing here, the stop button, right here on the side, you see these knobs, the upper two? This one here came set for stop, so that when I push that button inadvertently with my finger while holding the throttle in my hand, I was also cutting power. So I went in, and I'll show you how you can change that. So in order to change the function associated with these buttons here, you have to go into the app settings. So let's do that. We'll click on the menu button and go down here to where it says App Settings. Click on that, and then we're going to move down here to where it says Key Bindings, and that refers to the various push buttons or keys on the side. So let's go there, and you can see that I've got it set right now where the top left is function 2, bottom left function 1, bottom right or top right toggles the direction of travel, and bottom right is F0, the headlight. So to change any of those, you simply push on it, and you can see all of the different functions. You can assign any one of these functions to one of these buttons. Okay, I'm going to hit cancel and leave it the way it is. So that's a very important feature, because these are very convenient and easy to use on your locomotives. Okay, now one of the features that I talked about previously in the last video on the cab control system was that you can lengthen the useful life of the battery by simply changing the brightness of the display. So how do you go about doing that? Well, that requires changing some Android features. So let's go to that. And those of you that have Android phones are probably aware of this. So I'm going to bring this up, and let's bring up Settings. So that little snowflake display was our settings. And you can see one of the things that's available under that is Display. So let's look at Display. Right up here you can see Brightness Level is the first thing you can change. Bring that up, and it's a simple little scroll bar here that you can use to set the brightness. So I've got it set at 71% now. So by simply changing the brightness, I can make the battery last a lot longer in this particular throttle. Okay, let's take a look at what's involved with creating a new Loco, because you can't simply enter a Loco address in here and you're off and running. So what you have to do is go up here and we can edit locomotives, delete them, create them, or create a consist. So let's go ahead and look at create a locomotive. Okay, it's going to come up. It's going to ask you what address it is. So we can enter, let's say it's 2222. Okay, we're going to want to set the DCC speed step setup. It can be 14, 28, or 128. Let's assume we're going to use 128. So you can see that's been changed. And now we'll go down here and we can give it a name. We'll just put test in here. And then you can select an image. So we can go in here and all kinds of images are available. If you go far enough down here, you get to the American locomotives. Like I said, if you go far enough, there are a lot in here. Here we go. So let's call it a Via Alco FAPA. So there we've got a display. Now you can also upload your own images in here so that in the future when you're creating a locomotive entry, you can upload a photograph of that specific locomotive and have it displayed on the throttle when you're using that locomotive. Okay, so there are a bunch of other things that you can do in here, but once those are done, you just hit the save button and you've got that locomotive is now active with its picture displayed. So, very simple, easy to do, but you have to go through that step. Now, I will say though, if you have Railcom Plus active on the throttle and on your DCC system there, and you put a LokeSound 5 or other Railcom Plus compatible decoder equipped Loco on the track, then it will automatically create that new locomotive entry for you. Saves you a few steps. But that's how you do it. Well, that's a wrap for today's look at the CabControl system from ESU. I really think it's a nice system. There are a couple of things related to the use of Railcom that you need to be aware of. So hopefully you've paid attention to that part of the video, and also on dealing with the circuit breaker that's built into the main unit. So both of those are going to require just a little bit of extra attention on your part. That's it for this week. Have a great weekend and a great week, and I'll see you here again with another video from the DCC Guide. Bye now.